The time has come once again, on rare occasion, to all my boners out there. Thank you for joining us on this return. Finally, after long last, it's been so cold without you all. But we've come back. And it's been, I want to say, 6 months. This is our longest hiatus yet. And I just got in touch with Matt and we just had to crank one out. But hopefully this will be the start of something new, something beautiful, something consistent, something that I can hold on to, and something you can rely on. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the Back and Bone Show for your enjoyment. Enjoy the show.
You shut up now.
Big casa é sua casa. Let's come shabu. Let the party begin.
Your ears you keep, and I'll tell you why.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Take this quarter. Go downtown and have a rat gnaw that thing off your face. Good day to you, man.
I'm so embarrassed. I wish everybody else was dead.
I don't want to sound like a queer or nothing, but I'm really gonna miss you guys when the show's over.
Everybody else hear this to verify if I'm crazy.
The letter in. Matt seems to think for some fucking psycho reason that I say in funny. Hold on, we haven't started the audio recording. Bougie, we're live. Okay. So B0 in. I don't know why you typed I in like a fucking psychopath. In 3 3 2 3 8.
All right.
Got it?
Yes, I do.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Bone and Back Show.
We need to hear from the people because we just had a real snafu here, and I needed the Wi-Fi password to Keith's internet, and
Which all of you know now.
yes,
So you're welcome.
so he's telling me the password, and as you guys probably heard, he goes to tell me the letter N, and he says in. So I type I-N, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm
He's
like,
picking random letters that I'm not telling him to
and,
type in.
and I'm like, "You said in." And he was like, "Yeah, the letter in." And I was like, "What letter are you talking about? You mean like N?" And he was like, "Yeah, in." So
I can't figure out the difference between in and in for this motherfucker. He thinks that
he's saying, you guys can hear it. I need you to tell him and verify it for me. He's saying in. I'm talking about N.
there's no difference between in and in. What the fuck is this guy talking about? I'm about to choke this motherfucker. I haven't seen him in months. He won't return my calls. He thinks he's better than me. And now he's got problems with the way I fucking say letters.
I'd never noticed it before. But
Why would you notice something non-existent like me saying the word in wrong?
people are this is gonna be a hot topic. You are gonna be
I wanna hear
flooded.
the comments on who's the asshole right now, because I'm about to choke this motherfucker.
He's gonna be. You guys need to flood him with messages telling him that he
Facebook,
says N
Instagram,
in a funny way.
the Back and Bone profiles, just hit us with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's been a while, and we're back. Mostly this is Matt's fault. I'd just like to point out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's I was many times considering just opening up the Bone Show.
Yeah.
But that just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Mm-mm.
And I probably would have had to pull my dick out if that's what we were doing.
Uh-huh.
Bone and Friends, same problem.
Yeah.
And I had other guests, if we weren't back and boning people, it's just not the same. It just gets straight vulgar. So, but
yeah,
you know,
I agree.
back in Santa Maria for some fucking reason, you know, where dreams die.
Dreams come to die in Santa Maria.
It's like a retirement home for anything you want to do in your life.
One positive is that when we were doing live podcasts from your room in Pasadena, it was
my favorite,
unbearably hot.
My favorite episode.
It was the hot box.
Yeah.
And speaking of hot boxes, I just got back from New Mexico, Santa Fe, last week, and it was
adjust this lighting here real quick.
No problem.
Please keep talking.
And it was incredibly hot. It wasn't super bad. It was in like the mid 90s, and it was fairly dry. But I'm prone to getting heat rashes. So I got a heat rash, and it fucking sucked. In case you guys didn't know.
Is that a little better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
In case you guys didn't know, I despise getting rashes. I hate heat rashes. It's like the worst thing to me.
Like having a rash?
I don't like having a rash.
Must be hard for you.
I didn't really think this one out.
Yeah, no.
Because, but yeah, I don't like it. It's just not for me.
So, New Mexico gave you a rash.
It gave me a
That
rash.
must be a common problem.
It was
I
itchy.
imagine the people of New Mexico just have to live with this all the time. Everybody leaving their...
They, you know, they should really do something
rashes.
about it. I was thinking about starting some sort of a petition,
An anti-New
something
Mexico
to
thing, yeah.
create awareness about the dangers of heat rashes.
The dangers of visiting New Mexico in general.
They can really damper your vacation.
Yeah.
And it did for me.
Well, I hate to hear that. You know, I had my first sunburn in like 15 years the other day.
Yeah.
It was gruesome. It was hilarious, actually. I went to the beach with some people, got stung by a stingray. Bottom of my foot. I didn't know that was.
How'd you get stung by a stingray?
Stepped on it.
You almost got Steve Irwin.
I got well. That's what everybody says, but contrary to popular belief, Steve Irwin did not die from being stung in the foot by a stingray.
He was stung in the chest.
He was stung in the heart by a giant stingray.
Yeah,
I was stung by a stingray that was about this big, with a barb like that big, whereas Steve Irwin got one of these motherfuckers in his heart.
You got a big old one.
But I have a souvenir. This thing's nice. Wait till you see this, guys. This is the bag that the medics fill with hot water when you get stung by a stingray. Go on.
Look at that.
It's all adorable. Has a little stingray,
you know,
stingray figurines on it.
That kind of looks like it could be like a hipster store in like Venice, where they're like, "This is Stingray surf shop," or something like that.
We've got all your fucking fedoras and.
I was gonna ask if you killed the stingray for revenge.
I thought about going back out there and coming after it, but I realized that the stingray, the gentle stingray, is really our friend, and they don't really attack unless they feel threatened. And it was my big fat foot that stepped on its back, and I imagine if this thing comes anywhere near you in nature, you're gonna probably stick something inside of it. I would.
Was it painful?
Enormously painful. It was so fucking painful. It was like a bee sting, but like if a bee was like 30 pounds. Like it was. My foot was all bloody. It was getting sand mashed into it because I had to like waddle my way to the lifeguard post and everything.
Getting stung by a 30-pound bee does sound like it would be awful.
I mean, I imagine if a bee was 30 pounds, it would probably put a lot more venom in the sting. No, it was just. Like, it hurt for hours. It was pretty bad. And it was sore for a few days. Like, those motherfuckers, I guess there's some areas where they're really common. Like if you go to Bolsa Chica, that was where I got stung. They're fucking everywhere. I was the 5th person that day that stepped on one.
Wow.
And then there was like 25 more that day that stepped on them. Nasty creatures.
Stay away from Bolsa Chica.
Well, shuffle your feet and don't go in the water because it's not fucking worth it.
Well, you know, something fun I did while I was in New Mexico is I went to this thing called Meow Wolf. Have you ever heard of this?
It sounds made up, so no.
It's a interactive art installation with like 70 different rooms.
So that's a little bit more intense than the one I went to. I went to an interactive art exhibit in Hollywood called Flutter. That was pretty fucking amazing. I think that one was only like 15 rooms.
Yeah, I think there's more and more of them popping up, but
it's pretty cool.
If you guys get a chance to go, I mean, it's not for everybody, but if you get a chance to go, I would highly recommend it. It was pretty impressive.
Drugs, these things are pretty cool. Like if you're the type of person who enjoys tripping out on shit, then
it was like an episode of like Twin Peaks or like the Twilight Zone. Like you walk in and you open the fridge, and then the fridge leads into another room, and then you can like hop in the washer, and that leads to another room, and then they have a giant dinosaur fossil that you can start playing like a drum, and like it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty cool.
But the one I went to, Flutter, it wasn't quite as like situated like that. It was just like you go into the first room, and then there's all this crazy shit, and you get to interact with it. There was like the first room had, for one, it had the most comfortable beanbags. Probably the most comfortable piece of furniture that I've ever touched my body to, were these fucking beanbags. And then you sit there and you put these VR headsets on. They're the HTC VR headsets, and then you watch this VR music video that this guy made, super weird. And then you go from that into the actual, like the hallway, and you just start picking what rooms you want to go to. And there's a ton of them. There was one that the walls are covered in these Velcro shapes that you get to pull off the wall, and you get to redesign the room however you want. There was one that had black light makeup. The whole room was covered in black lights, and then there was these crazy designs on the wall, and you get to like do your makeup and and then a lot of vaginas, lots of vaginas in there, lots of drawn vaginas, hairy vaginas, waxed vaginas, bleeding vaginas. They had all kinds.
It sounds like it's the wave of the future, kind of.
It's a very vaginal place.
These
it's beautiful.
It's so much better than because I actually really am not into, like, I've been to vaginas. That, but also I've been to the like the LA Museum of Art, and like I've been to a few art museums, and they just don't do it for me, man. They bore. I want to take a fucking nap when I go into an art museum, which is weird because I grew up doing like a lot of art, and I've always had a big interest in art. But art museums are just, they kind of depress me in a weird way. I guess it would have to depend on the type of art museum.
Yeah, I was going to say,
more classical art, I guess, bores me. Just like...
Yeah, what do you, like... What gives you that feeling when you go to a museum? Because
I don't know.
I don't have the same feeling. I go to an art museum, I always have this, like... I don't do it enough, though. Like, I don't go to museums quite enough. So when I do go, I have this little thrill to it. I really enjoy museums, and it's like I get a really similar feeling that I think most people get to maybe going to like an amusement park or something. Because it's very exciting to get just sort of immersed in art for me. Like, I get to read about the artist, and I have like professionals there who are talking about the art and stuff, and I get to learn a lot about it, and that's really fascinating to me.
I don't know what it is. I really couldn't even explain it to you.
But I did probably like just notch up my nerd gauge there, like pretty profoundly.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't know what it is. I think I think growing up, I always thought I would enjoy it, and I go and it just bores me. I don't know how to describe it. I was like obsessed with Leonardo da Vinci growing up. I had all of his art books. I've always enjoyed it, but just I don't know. It's just like I'll look at it for like a second, and I'm like, oh, that's from like 1500. That's cool. It's old. All right, next. And then I don't know. I can't linger there too long, I guess you could say.
I'm the same in that sense. Like, I can't sit there and like look at something for a long time and be like, just soak it in.
Yeah.
But it is really exciting to get to a museum and like I want to see the next thing and I want to experience it all. Have you ever been to the museum at the Griffith Park Observatory?
Yeah.
Seen the giant Tesla coil?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty badass. Huh?
Yeah. That is cool. Stuff like that I actually like a lot better. If it's like an actual like sculpture of some kind or some kind of like 3D art, I can get more into that. Yeah, paintings. And it depends on the type of painting too. There was actually Santa Fe is like a mecca for art galleries. They're all over the place and people come from all around the world just to buy art in Santa Fe. And it was funny, like they had some older art galleries where it was more traditional style, like, like fucking paintings of cactuses and flowers and shit like that. But then they had these other
New Mexican.
Yeah, but then they had these other two art galleries where it was pictures of like, I don't know, just more of the stuff, more kind of sci-fi oriented, kind of trippy, like, kind of almost like not somewhat disturbing art. And everybody I was with was looking at it and they were like, oh, I don't like that. And I was like, I don't know. I guess when it comes to art, I like when it borderline makes you uncomfortable, just a little bit, or full blown.
Sure. Because
but it is fascinating.
I can appreciate that. I get the same thing from like movies and stuff.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, I want stuff to be a little bit like, just push my boundaries a little bit.
Exactly.
To the point that I can still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But, I don't necessarily want it to be too comfortable. That's not going to impress me.
No, if it's too vanilla, I mean, it can go both ways. But if it's too vanilla, it's not for me. Because
and if it's too out there, there's nothing.
Also, too, yeah, exactly.
It becomes just a completely foreign alien thing.
Exactly.
There's no,
But when it's I think what bothers me the most about when something is, it doesn't mean that you can't tell a good story when it's vanilla, but I feel like a lot of times it makes it, well, it makes it, it makes it very predictable, you know? And I hate, that's one thing that drives me crazy if I go to a movie. If I can already guess what's going to happen next, I'm already out. I'm like, yeah, this is stupid. I've already seen this formula a million times.
Right. It's like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
That's why remakes are tough.
Yeah.
You seen It yet?
I was actually, that was on my notes. I saw, did you see It Chapter 2?
I haven't seen Chapter 2 yet.
I saw It Chapter 1. I did a movie review.
But I'm pretty sure the people win.
Yes.
If the original bears any truth to the new one.
I saw It Chapter 1 I enjoyed. It wasn't like, I mean, it didn't like, really blow my hair back, but it was a good, solid, concise horror movie. Fun horror movie.
It was like a fun horror movie.
Yeah.
It was almost like, it was like a family level horror movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't that scary. It was like something you could watch with your kids.
It was to me, it was like a throwback to like the 80s style of horror, like Gremlins-esque or something like that, where there's a lot of comedy infused in it. And it's just, that it's almost like
very
that.
Soft. It was like, I don't know because I haven't seen the Chapter 2 yet, but I was hoping that it was going to get a little more like intense with the horror because they're going to be adults.
Not at all.
No?
It goes the total opposite direction. Really? That was the first thing I said in my review, was that It Chapter 2 is just not very scary if at all. It's a lot.
I didn't think It Chapter 1 was very
No,
scary at all.
but if you didn't think It Chapter 1 was very scary, you won't think It Chapter 2 is even remotely scary.
Well,
because it's
shit,
not scary. It Chapter 2 dives in more into the sci-fi elements of the film.
Yeah.
Which is fine,
For the life
but
of me, I don't know why I can't. I can remember It Chapter 1, the original.
mm-hmm.
I can never, for fucking some reason, remember the details of Chapter 2. I remember the bully got old.
Yeah.
And he had white hair.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think he stabbed the black guy.
Yeah.
And the deadlights, and it was a spider.
Yes. Okay. I was gonna say there's a good reason why you probably don't remember Chapter 2 very well, because it's notoriously shitty.
Right.
It's.
I remember the Jewish guy cuts his wrist.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yep.
Too. That's the other.
And
thing.
it's actually they stick to pretty much the same. I mean, it's the same basic premise in the new one. But yeah, there's just something when you're dealing with partially the reason why there's just a lot of things that didn't really like add up storyline wise. Like one of the things there was things that they did in It Chapter 2 where it's almost like they kind of assumed that the viewer had more information than they did. And like stuff like, you're like supposedly when you leave the town of Derry that it came from, you forget things. So like the reason why, because my line of thought was, why would they?
Movie, you forget things
well, my line of thought was like, why would they come back to Derry, and why would they be scared of this thing that they already killed when they were like little children?
Right.
You know, why would that they've already done it once. What's
like,
scary?
Bitch, I already socked you up.
Yeah, we already know. They already know how to beat this thing. So their rationale for that is they forgot about it basically, and they slowly start to remember, and so that's what it's just inherently. It's just not even a good plot really, because it's like that they're gonna eventually remember and just kill the thing the same way they did the first. You're basically rehashing the same story just as adults.
Yeah.
So not too impressed with it too.
Was it fun to watch?
It was okay.
Good visuals or anything?
Yeah, that's that's one. The most positive thing I can say about it is it did have some good visuals. There was some really cool special effects. But one thing that I notated in my review is that it kind of suffered from that same thing that a lot of sequels suffer from, where the first movie does well on a very small budget, and then the second one gets this big inflated budget, but it's almost like they give them too much juice and they don't know what to do with it, and it's full of too much. And that's kind of how this was. It was a bit messy.
It's a big problem with movies and civil infrastructure and everything when budgets have this when there's like a budget demand where a budget is given to a project and then they have to use the whole budget.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm sure movies work in a similar way to most other things, where the finance sector is going to provide a budget. If they don't use the whole budget, they're going to be cut. The staff is going to be cut on the next project because they're like, well, you didn't need all this money.
Right.
So we're not going to approve you for that much money. So
well,
then they have to use all of it.
Well, and the thing is, too, there's the issue with the budget, but traditionally, especially in the realm of horror movies almost always, most of the best ones of all time are all made on small budgets.
Right.
Because then it requires the director to be more creative and come up with more, best horror movies of all time. You go Halloween, Evil Dead. Like a lot of these movies are all made on tiny, minuscule budgets.
And then Evil Dead, the worst one, was the one that they actually had a budget behind them.
Right.
Like
Army of Darkness. There's some people out there who are probably like, "What? I loved it. It has a cult following."
Yeah. I loved Army of Darkness too. But it's
no, Army of Darkness, like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are like straight up, like Evil Dead 2 is basically a remake of Evil Dead 1 with a slightly bigger budget.
They just kind of changed it.
Right,
They expanded Evil Dead 1.
Yeah. Army of Darkness is full blown, and it made the mistake, I notated this also in my review, it made the mistake that a lot of horror sci-fi movies make, where you can cite this example multiple times, but you have like Terminator 1 and 2. Terminator 1, a little more of like a horror thriller. Terminator 2, straight action sci-fi.
Right.
You have Alien, horror thriller. Aliens, the Marines come in, they're fucking machine gunning
Action
aliens.
sci-fi.
Action sci-fi. Same thing with Army of
over,
Darkness.
man.
You
Game
make
over.
Ash a hero now because he's already conquered the villain. Now he's a fucking, he's ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, it's a mistake because you're drifting
Well,
too far from the source material.
It is, but in the specific case of the Evil Dead franchise, there was a kind of like, there was this kind of attachment you get to Ash, where that character with the chainsaw hand and the boomstick and everything, he can't, like, did you ever watch Ash versus Evil Dead?
The Showtime series? Yeah.
It was great.
It was really good. Yeah.
It was a great,
but see,
like,
that was the right...
And it was a perfect thing to do with that character.
Exactly.
With what they had left off with
Yeah.
the whole Army of Darkness thing.
That was the
And
right...
The video games, all the Evil Dead video games were really good.
Well, that was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I think they took that character and they put, I mean, Army of Darkness had that comedic twist, but I think the Showtime series really like nailed it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
they took
yeah,
it and
so
went
good.
full force, and they made Ash this just really, really, really funny, like dirty
just
character.
Trashy dude.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just this
Yeah.
trashy trailer park old man, but
Yeah.
he just is a fucking gangster when it comes to
Well,
killing
and it's
monsters.
I mean, talk about an example of like perfect casting.
Oh yeah.
Like Bruce Campbell's Ash might be like the most perfectly cast character ever.
He's the original B movie actor, and that leads me into a movie that my sister and I watched last night, a classic that a lot of people have not seen, a fantastic B movie role by Bruce Campbell himself, Bubba Hotep.
I've never sat down and watched Bubba Hotep beginning to end.
Then you are missing out.
I've heard. I have heard.
Movie.
I know
so
the basic
good.
premise
Yeah.
of Bubba Hotep, and I know all about
It's
it.
very
But
campy, very silly, very basic. Where the idea is, it's not clear from beginning to end of the movie whether or not the character is mistaken. Sebastian Haff, played by Bruce Campbell, is an Elvis impersonator who he's in an old folks home. And he believes that he's the real Elvis. And somewhere in the peak of his career, he wanted to give up his throne as the king. So he went to the best Elvis impersonator he could find and switched lives with him.
Is that why Bruce Campbell says "Hail to the King" in Evil Dead? Is that, or in any of those movies? Because you know how he says "Hail to the King, baby." Is that like a reference to that?
I believe that was much older than Bubba Hotep. But
No, I know that, but I think, or maybe, I'm sorry, I meant to say in Army of Darkness. I think in Army of Darkness he says "Hail to the King, baby," and
I think that was much older than I think
Bubba Hotep.
I think
Bubba Hotep was probably like late 80s, early 90s.
No. Bubba Hotep was like 2000s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bubba
Oh,
Hotep's
shit.
fairly new.
Okay.
In the scheme of things, like Army of Darkness is much older, but this is after Bruce Campbell was pretty well established as a B-movie actor.
Right around the time he was in Spider-Man.
Yeah, I would say it's about that time.
Yeah.
When he created Spider-Man, as he noted.
He could have. No, I was just about to say something really silly, but then never mind.
He could have been Spider-Man.
A young Bruce Campbell's Peter Parker.
An old Bruce Campbell.
An old Bruce Campbell.
Like all
an aging Peter
bulging
Parker.
Out of the spandex.
That's actually talk about good casting.
Oh.
Aging Peter Parker, Bruce Campbell around Army of Darkness era.
As an aging Peter Parker.
Or maybe a little bit older than that.
He was a little bit too young in Army of Darkness.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe like
aging character,
5 to 10 years after that.
I love the idea of that was one of my favorite things on Spider-Verse. The fat Peter Parker who's out of shape.
Talk about perfect.
Yeah,
and then
hilarious.
Talk about perfect. Also perfect. The perfect casting. The what's his name? I always forget that actor's name, but the guy they got to voice him. Perfect casting, like perfect type of voice for that character. Yeah, he's a great actor. Jake Johnson, I think his name is. He's a great actor.
He was the principal on 21 Jump Street,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. He
One more gay black kid getting punched in the face away from a fucking aneurysm.
It's one interesting thing I read about Into the Spider-Verse that, and it's like one of those really subtle things that you'll notice when you're watching it, but if you don't have, and I don't work in movies obviously, but and if you don't have an acute, don't I though? If you don't have an acute eye for something like this, you'd never notice unless it was explained to you. But something cool that they did was they placed Miles Morales' character in the movie at a slower frame rate than Peter Parker's. Mm-hmm. So when they're web slinging and stuff like that, Miles Morales almost looks like that stop motion, like clunky, really like this. Right. Whereas Peter Parker's fluid and smooth, and they did that to show that this kid is learning how to use his powers, so he's still very awkward like a child. Mm-hmm. And this Peter Parker has been doing this for years, so he's smooth and he's fluid. So even though
he's all like fat and out of shape, he is like a professional Spider-Man.
Right, he's exactly. Yeah, he's been doing it for years. He could do it with his eyes closed, you know. And that's what part of what made that movie so great is the attention to those little details like that. That's what sets a great movie apart from a good movie.
It was a really exceptional movie, just overall, like so much better than I expected it to be.
Yeah. And they could do so much with that. You could literally go in. I think it would be hilarious if they full blown went in and like did like South Park style where they used like a real actual actor and inserted him into that Spider-Verse. Like if they took Tom Holland Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and just threw him like Roger Rabbit into the cartoon universe. Wouldn't that be fucking hilarious? I would love that.
Yeah, that they could probably do something with that. I'm sure.
They probably wouldn't. They would probably just animate them and include.
I feel like the days of, as you mentioned, Roger Rabbit, that whole like that intermingling of animation and live action is probably behind us.
It is like because
it's got such a bad reputation from what's been done in the past.
there's only a couple of examples. You have Roger Rabbit, Cool World, Brad Pitt.
That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah,
I think that was a Ralph Bakshi production.
Who knows?
But anyways, the inherent problem with something like that is South Park will do it, and they just won't even acknowledge the fact that, like, remember when they had Mel Gibson and it was his actual face? Yeah. They just won't acknowledge how ridiculous it is. Right. They'll just pretend like nobody notices.
That's the beauty of South Park. Though, they don't have to answer to anyone.
Whereas with Roger Rabbit, they openly acknowledge that there's the cartoons and then there's the, so I don't know how they would go about
South
that.
Park, he was chopped up like one of their goddamn Canadians, so he looked like fucking crazy.
That was,
like, he was
was
really
a classic episode.
It was an image of him, but it was him like a photograph cutout with his head cut in half, so they could move it around. Like, it was insane.
Mel Gibson is funny. I watched. There's this thing that they do on I think it's Collider.com, but it's where they'll do actors or like directors roundtable. Well, they'll just sit there and talk for an hour, and most people.
I don't know how much is getting picked up here. But you should probably sit a little closer.
Sorry.
I know you don't want to be that close to me right now, but it's been a while, Matt.
Most people would probably find this. Sorry.
So it comes out of these sounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
most people
he never listens to me.
Most people
like his mother sometimes
would probably find it incredibly boring. But it's basically a round table of actors and directors that just sit there and talk about like their movies and their like artistic process, and I don't know, I like it. But they had an episode that had Mel Gibson on there amongst like 6 other actors and directors, and he just always looks like he's just barely holding it together. He's gonna fly off the panhandle. And even when he talks, like, it's so...
Well, whenever you see him anywhere, like, see him at, like, UFCs and stuff, they'll, like, pan the camera over to him. He just looks like he's about to pop. Like,
yeah.
The crazy look in his eye. It's like...
But the fascinating thing about this Inside the Actors roundtable was that when they get to him and he starts talking, it's just like that undeniable star quality. It's just, like, magnetic. Because it was the other people at the round table, some of them were actors, but most of them were directors. And it's so clear the difference between what makes a star and not. The other people could make movies that have stars and have all the creative content, but when he talks, you're just like, you just listen.
Right. Right. So he really draws you in.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson's great.
He is great.
He might be...
He might be
a
batshit
horrible
crazy.
racist. He might be batshit crazy. You know.
Can you recover from what he did? I mean, he kind of recovered. He made some successful movies after that.
He made some really
He never
successful
he
movies,
never
but-
fully mainstream recovered though. He didn't.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like he's still out there in the world, and he's still successful and everything.
I mean,
he has that black mark against him. Like,
well,
it's
there's
hilarious.
no getting around that. I
Yeah.
mean, look, if I'm a black man or woman, or even if I'm not, I'm probably not gonna like Mel Gibson. I mean, it's pretty hard to like a guy who said the shit that he said. It was insanely.
What if you're Jewish?
Or if you're Jewish. There you go. But the difference with that, though, is that they didn't get him on film saying that about Jew. I think that was just what the cops had said.
Right.
They have him, like, voice recordings of him saying the shit that he said about black people. And it is...
Hilarious.
I mean, that's, you know... Everybody has a friend who at one point you're like, oh, I heard him say some questionable things one time.
That's who Mel Gibson
But-
is to us.
Right.
He's our friend.
Right.
Who's made some
Okay.
questionable statements
But
about
when...
people of color.
If your friend makes a questionable statement, it's typically fairly mild. It's in passing, and then you kind of just forget about it. It's not a insane tirade that goes to epic proportions. I mean, that was like, holy shit.
God, I love Mel Gibson.
But I still like him. I mean,
oh man,
I
What a
probably wouldn't want to
lunatic.
be like friends with him. He's probably a pretty intense dude, but you
Yeah,
know.
I imagine if you were in a room with Mel Gibson, like, the way I picture it is you're just sitting there, and if you turn the TV on, he would turn it off.
Yeah.
If you tried to talk to him,
Yeah.
he wouldn't answer your questions, and he would just kind of stare at you. And if you tried to leave, he might follow you. Like,
Here's a perfect Mel Gibson scenario. Like, let's say I'm Mel Gibson,
mhm,
and I'm gonna offer you a drink,
mhm.
and you deny the drink. So I go, "Hey, would you like a drink?"
Oh no, thank you, Mel. Appreciate it.
What do you mean you don't want a drink?
I'm not thirsty right now.
You're fucking insulting me. You need to take a drink. Take a fucking drink. You're insulting me. That's the type of shit. That's the intensity I feel like Mel would come at you with.
I think it would be more subtle than that. I feel like it would be intense in a more subtle way. Like you'd reject the drink and he would just pour it anyway.
He'd be like, "Well, you're gonna take it."
So what? Because in my house, in the Gibson house,
we take
we
drinks.
take drinks.
And then he
And
would
there's
do.
no black people allowed. Take your shoes off.
God. No Jewish or black
No
people.
Jewish or black people allowed in the Gibson house.
God, he's so horrible. All right, on from Mel Gibson. One thing I wanted to talk about. Have you ever been on a flight that had turbulence?
Doesn't every flight have turbulence on it?
I'm talking
Or
about.
Have I just been flying American Airlines too much?
I'm talking about turbulence that makes your balls pull up into your stomach. Like that kind of turbulence.
Like real fear turbulence.
Yes.
I don't think so, no.
All right, this was when we went to New Mexico, this was like my 10th flight. And every flight I've been on up until this point had some moderate turbulence, but nothing too crazy, just a little shaking of the plane.
Sure.
But as we were taking off back from New Mexico, the plane dude, full blown. It was just one time, but it was full blown. Everybody up out of their seats, like boom, dropped. And people screamed. It was fucking intense. It was the only time I've ever been on a plane where I could not relax for the entire flight after that. And the entire time, all I could think about is like the scene you see in a movie where the person is ruminating, envisioning themselves and the sound of beep, 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 beep. Literally, that's all I could think about the entire time.
Right.
It was fucking horrifying. And I don't get scared on flights ever. And I was sitting there just totally on edge. Everybody around me was on edge. You could tell. It was just
Just a room full of uncomfortable people
Oh.
just looking out the window.
it was fucking awful. God damn, is that scary.
I'm really glad you went through that. Makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Were you near the wing? Could you you see, like, you know?
I could.
What was it? What was the movie where the gremlins?
Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
Twilight Zone. The gremlins on the way. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was just, goddamn, it was scary. I don't know what else to say.
I think you said it.
Yeah. You know what I want to talk about really, really bad? I've wanted to talk to you about with this.
I want to hear what you want to talk about.
What the fuck is going on with BJ Penn? Has he lost his goddamn mind?
I remember hearing some shit about it. Who's he
You
fighting
haven't
with?
seen it?
No, I didn't see it. No. I remember hearing about it, like, he wants to fight everybody still, but like...
You're telling me you haven't seen the video of BJ Penn getting knocked out in a street fight?
No,
By
I
an
heard about
overweight
that.
bar patron?
I heard about that. Yeah, what's he doing? All right, let's watch this video. I see
All right.
him gearing up here.
So they released a video of BJ Penn in a street fight about, it was like a few months back. And it was him on top of this guy, controlling him, just throwing punches and elbows, just beating him up, basically.
I didn't know he got knocked out. I heard about that.
Okay, no.
I heard about that
I'm
part
gonna
of the fight,
I'm gonna
yeah.
explain it. I'm gonna explain it.
This, please.
Okay, so they released that video months ago, right? But then they released this video recently, just like a week ago, of BJ Penn. This guy's throwing punches at him, and BJ's like, yeah, come on. He puts his hands down and he, like, you know, kind of like lets him. But then one of them hits him and BJ goes out cold. Which, look, I think that a lot of people who haven't been in a fight really don't understand how easy it is to knock somebody out if you're just letting them openly. Like, a girl can knock you out cleanly.
It doesn't take a lot of
It
power
doesn't
to
take a
knock
lot.
somebody
If you're
out.
just
If
leaving
you're-
your chin out
if
there,
you're-
it is very
your
easy to
chin
get
is
knocked out.
and you're relaxed, like your neck is relaxed, and you're just like, what? It takes very little pressure. To
Yeah,
actually
it doesn't
knock
take
somebody
much. So I'm not faulting BJ Penn for that. It's not like he was fucking squaring up, boxing with this dude, and the guy KO'd him. However, it is so insanely, like, he should know better. It's so insanely stupid. And now this is going to be a part of his legacy, essentially. So this was the first video where that they released months ago. Yeah, the guy's shooting in, BJ's controlling him. Or no, this was the one they released recently. Sorry.
I wouldn't call that guy. Oh,
But then he goes out.
Hey, to be fair, that wasn't like a bad combo. The guy went over the top and then came back with a hook.
Now,
like,
it's even if you just watch the beginning, though, it's pretty obvious that had BJ wanted to take control of this, he very easily could have. He let the guy punch him, but what a fucking critical mistake.
over the top and comes back under with sort of a shovel hook.
He
that
went-
wasn't a bad shot.
No.
Let's, like, put that out there.
For those of
All
you
right.
guys that haven't seen this, BJ goes out, his head bounces off the
Yeah.
concrete. He was fucking out. No doubt about it.
Well, you always hear these stories about pro fighters, and like sometimes you hear stories about a fighter fucking somebody up at a bar. Sometimes you hear a story about them getting knocked out in a bar fight by, like, you know, fighters are people too.
Yeah,
You know,
they're human.
Our bones are denser from the amount of strain we put on them. We're prepared in a technical way for the activity of fighting because that's something that we do. But at the same time, we still have the limitations of human physiology.
Yeah.
If you're not in a state where you're really prepared to deal with that, and you're not expecting somebody to have the skills to really effectively hurt you. You can be in a relaxed enough place to be really vulnerable. And I feel like when you take somebody out of the cage and they're not in this professional environment, they're going to be a lot looser.
Yeah.
And like more just like, whatever, fuck around with this guy. And it's a real vulnerability. You even see that with fighters who are at the top of the heap for too long and they become complacent with their skills and they don't expect anybody to challenge them.
Yeah, classic example, Anderson Silva getting KO'd by Weidman.
Yeah. I feel like people forget this because this was a really long time ago, but like Uriah Faber when he fought Mike Brown.
Yeah, that first fight.
He was so dominant over everyone that he fought. He never had a challenge for the longest time. Then somebody who was pretty fucking good came in and put the screws to him, and it was like you could see on his face he just wasn't. he wasn't outmatched. He just wasn't used to a match.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also too with Mike Brown in particular, that might be a classic example of a guy who really, like, on paper, not nearly as decorated as Uriah Faber, like not even
when he
close.
came in and fought him, it was just.
But it's just it's one of those examples of like just a tough matchup for a guy, because even in their rematch, Faber broke both of his hands and he was able to fight him with just elbows.
Right.
But he did lose the rematch.
Right.
I think that fight, just under any circumstances, just a tough fight for Faber for whatever reason.
For a number of reasons.
I think Faber, you could line up 10 other fighters and Faber would do better against those 10 other fighters than Mike Brown would.
I agree.
But for some reason, he's just got a little bit of a tough time with Mike Brown.
He's just physically a tough matchup for him. Mike Brown's a really, really strong guy. He's a little longer than Uriah. He has a bigger frame, and I feel like that combination of being as strong as Uriah with a longer frame gave Uriah this really tricky boundary issue with the fight.
Yeah, and
but
the thing with BJ, it's like, God, this guy, he's really just, man, it's disappointing.
Also on that video, aside from it just being disappointing to see BJ get in fucking bar fights and shit, he wasn't exactly, I wouldn't say he was like dropping his hands and being like, whoa, like whatever about it. The guy was shooting in on him, and he came up off the shot and threw a combo and caught him. And that was actually like,
caught him off guard.
You would expect somebody to do that in a fight effectively. Like that's a not a bad idea.
Let me talk about that more. I'm gonna go pee real quick.
Matt's gonna go pee, and I'm gonna talk to you guys. We're gonna have a little technique hour with the bone time, if you will. I was gonna try to combine the word technique and bone, but I don't think there's a way. But yeah, I mean, a really good example of that being done effectively. I mean, mixing shots with strikes, old school, Kevin Randleman versus Mirko Krokop. Randleman was shooting in on Krokop a lot, and he was pressuring his hips and making him fear the takedown, because Kevin Randleman was a world-renowned wrestler. He was highly decorated, expert, explosive guy. Krokop was a dangerous striker, and here he is, obviously just not worried about the hands of Kevin Randleman. Kevin Randleman doesn't even knock people out. Sure, he's big and strong and dangerous and explosive, but he's not somebody that you have to worry about in that sense. But Randleman kept working the shot, and as he feared the takedown, his hands come down, and he defends his hips. Randleman goes for one duck, pops back up with a lead hook, similar to the shot that BJ got hit with. Really, really similar, in fact. And just put his ass to sleep. And that's what, changing levels is really good for. The only thing about this fight is it's a big fat lop who doesn't appear like he has any business fighting anyone. I'm somewhat surprised that he was able to pull off techniques that effectively, but he did, and he also outweighed BJ by a good 100 pounds by the looks of things.
Oh, the guy in the video?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, BJ just, more and more stuff has come out too. There was like some crazy stuff that BJ Penn's wife was accusing him of. There was some other stuff that came out. God, who was it? Nick Lentz was saying that BJ Penn, he's been calling out BJ forever and nobody knew why. And apparently BJ was like harassing him and his wife on Instagram. And like there's just more and more shit that's coming out where it's kind of just seeming like BJ's not a great guy.
He's kind of like the Mel Gibson of...
Exactly what took the words out of my mouth.
And I really I feel like a lot of the stories that we told about Mel Gibson can just be paralleled.
Yeah.
Like our assumptions about Mel Gibson can be paralleled with BJ Penn. Like, just with a different accent,
Yeah.
Coming to his house, or like you guys are in a room together, you turn on the TV, BJ might turn it off and be like, I don't want to watch TV, bro.
What are you doing, bro? I don't want to watch
I
TV.
don't want to watch TV.
And
I'm trying to hang out with you, bro.
not to
You
mention,
don't think I'm entertaining enough for you? Here, have a drink.
B-
I don't need a drink, BJ. And he just pours it anyway. He's all, well, we're having a drink, okay?
BJ is on an epic losing streak right now.
Oh yeah. Well,
he's coming off
1,000
of
years old.
2,
and he,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's coming off of 7 losses in a row. He's got to hang it up. There's nothing else to say really. You know, the guy's just got to stop.
Yeah.
And it's not even one of those things where the fights that he lost
What
were.
the fuck was he doing fighting Ryan Hall anyway? That's a crazy one.
I know, right? I couldn't believe that when they announced that I was like, what are they doing matching him up with Ryan Hall? You've got this young, like, up and coming stud in the prime of his career.
He's like the best fucking grappler of all time.
Yeah,
like,
and you're putting him in there with what the fuck? It's crazy.
That's nonsense.
But
they had no business.
But well, I was listening to Joe Rogan's Fight Companion yesterday, and Eddie Bravo was saying that I guess they have a really hard time getting matchups for Ryan Hall.
Yeah,
nobody wants to fight him because he's such a tricky. I mean, when you got a specialist,
dangerous guy.
Yeah,
a dangerous human being.
When you got a specialist like that, people just don't. They don't want that fight. It's tough to prepare for, I guess.
Yeah.
And his striking's.
How do you prepare for a
exactly
Ryan Hall like that?
Yeah.
You can't get somebody who can grapple the way he can.
No, and dude, and have you seen how much better his striking's got?
I've heard.
He's actually got some pretty creative, like he's throwing some crazy like wheel kicks and they're like fluid too. They're not like shitty looking.
Right.
They're good.
Interesting.
So guy's doing well.
Yeah, well, good for Ryan Hall.
You know, speaking of bar fights and things of that nature, have you seen the video of Connor punching the old man? It was more like a bitch slap.
Yeah, he kind of he like I watched his apology video too, which was
so weird, right?
Was really weird.
He seemed like he was like fucked up, like he was.
He seemed like he was like in a weird headspace, like he might have been like pilled out or something.
Yes.
And he seemed like he was very regretful, but he kind of didn't actually ever apologize. He never
he basically
apologized for doing it. He was kind of just like in this weird zone. He was like, yeah, it's in the past, and it was wrong that I did it, and I shouldn't have done it, but I want to put it behind me. Dude, never be like, I'm sorry. It was, you know, he just couldn't quite like put the I'm sorry out there, but it was like, it was super strange.
It was strange because it was very like, and he said
also wouldn't admit that he did it either, and I'm sure that was
that was
probably a thing.
And
he's like admitting that he did it would put him in some sort of. He just kept going, it's all resolved now. It's all.
But you know what? I don't necessarily disagree with his approach in not apologizing to the public for it.
Right.
He kind of took the one thing I've always admired, even though Chael Sonnen is full of shit like 80% of the time, one thing I always appreciated about Chael Sonnen is like when he fucks up, he owns it 100%. Right. He makes zero excuses. When he got busted for taking all the shit he was taking,
yeah, his steroid speech is one of my favorite lines of all time.
Yeah.
He's like what did he say? He's like, they tested me and they said your testosterone is 6 times that of a normal man's, and he said, I said to the doctor, your machine is broken, sir. My testosterone is way higher than that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like, you know, it's if you get caught, just fucking own it. I mean, there's so many fighters could learn from that because it looks so much worse when you do go out. I mean, if he, you know, it's what happened with Connor and that guy. Why should he apologize to the public? It's between him and that guy. Absolutely. If he wants to apologize to that guy, great.
Yeah,
that's what he should do. But
I agree. It was just weird because like it felt weird because that was like what he was there to do.
And he didn't. You shouldn't put yourself on a platform like that unless you are prepared to do that because that's what people are expecting.
And he was not doing.
And on top, okay,
he was dancing around it. It was like a 45-minute interview.
Yeah, and it would have been different if Connor had looked into the camera and said and explained look, I don't need to apologize to the
I'm not
public.
here-
I don't need to
yeah.
apologize to you or anybody else. I apologized to him. I made my man. You know, if he had said that, okay. But he was just
the
like,
situation is under control. I've made amends with him. I'm here to explain the situation to you. I'm not here to apologize.
Right.
But he kind of danced around the
Yeah.
apology. It was and he kept repeating himself and saying, "Yeah, it's in the past. The situation's been resolved," and he kept saying that like in circles, and that was really strange.
yeah, it was very uncharacteristic in the sense that typically he's like Mr. Smooth Talker, and there was just nothing.
Well, he had a very like neutered demeanor, like somebody had whipped him, like he'd had something. He had an agenda. That's what I was getting out of that. There was something he had to get out for some reason that wasn't his own priority.
Yeah,
that was what I was getting out of that.
Well, Justin Gaethje went hard at him on Twitter.
Did he?
Yeah.
God, I gotta pay more attention to social media.
I'm not on Twitter. I read this on MMA Junkie, but they said that Justin Gaethje like full blown said he was a piece of shit husband and human being. That everything he's done is irredeemable.
Like that.
I mean, it's at this point though, it's kind of hard to disagree with him.
I mean, me a good bad husband story. That's
yeah. But speaking of Justin Gaethje, he's going to be fighting Donald Cerrone coming up.
That should be a really good fight.
That's a very, very interesting fight because I think they must have trained together because they both came out of Winklejohn's spot.
Well, didn't what's his name? Cerrone. He like hates Winklejohn, right?
Now he does.
He was talking a lot of shit on Winklejohn, and he was saying good things about Greg Jackson, but he was very anti Winklejohn. I can't remember like.
He said that Winklejohn. What Cerrone said about Winklejohn was that the way he holds pads is cookie cutter. He doesn't necessarily cater to who he's working with, and he's basically just concerned with keeping it like a Toys R Us gym where they're just fucking bringing people in and out. Right. And whereas he said that the other guy Jackson was a lot more attentive to detail, and he was kind of basically said that Jackson was kind of the mastermind of everything, whereas Winklejohn was just kind of. And he said basically the longer he stayed there, Jackson has kind of moved into the background, and he doesn't really do any hands-on work with the fighters much anymore.
Right, yeah.
But
now he's at the ranch or whatever.
The BMF.
Yeah.
BMF ranch. What do you think about that fight? Who you got between Cerrone and Gaethje?
Okay, so we got this thing going right now with Cerrone. Cerrone made his old man comeback. Like he's in the twilight of his career, but he's having that like he may not even be in the twilight of his career. He may actually be in his prime. I don't know. But he made this big move where he just went on a tear and was fucking everybody up, putting people in their place as he's fighting them. And then he fought Tony Ferguson, and that really halted his ascension.
Yeah.
Now, in that phase of his career, you have to think about what that does to his mentality. Is he coming back from that as a like? Fuck it, I'm here to win fights, I'm here to, just keep putting food on the table for my family, that's the place he's in? Or is he thinking, well, fuck me, I'm not getting the title now, and did that shut down his so you gotta know where his head's at to make a really honest assertion as to what you think is gonna happen in this fight. I think Cerrone 2 fights ago beats Gaethje. I like Justin Gaethje. I think he's a really exciting fighter. I think he's fucking badass. I think he's a little sloppier than Cerrone. And I think Cerrone's inside game is going to cut through... prime Cerrone's inside striking is going to cut through Gaethje's striking. But it's hard to say.
It's an interesting fight because it's a similar spot that you've seen Cerrone in before. And typically, against a fighter like Gaethje... Cerrone either looks really, really good.
Is it Gaethje or Gaethje?
Gaethje.
I've heard
I'm not sure.
Gaethje.
So he either against a fighter like that, he either does really, really good or really, really bad. Because You look at his fight with Ferguson. You look at his fight with Nate Diaz. You look at his fight with Jorge Masvidal. You look at his fight. There's a couple of other examples I'm forgetting. But one thing that Gaethje, Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, all those guys have in common is they have that tough, like, mental strength. They are not necessarily the most technically proficient at everything they do. They're all great technical fighters, but they are just headstrong fighters.
They're savages.
They're fucking
fighters.
savages. And Cerrone crumbles against those guys sometimes. But there's other fights, like his fight with fucking, what's his name? The one recently. God, why am I forgetting his name? Perry, Iaquinta. There's some other ones
He beat
where
the dog shit out
right,
of Iaquinta.
and there's fights like
that was like he made him look like he had no business.
Exactly. So then there's fights like that where he comes out and he picks those type of dudes apart.
Yeah.
So it's I tell you what, this is not going to be, to me, I don't think it'll be a super competitive fight. I might be totally wrong on that. I think it's either going to be he's going to look great or he's going to crumble. That's my opinion.
I think that's a pretty fair expectation of Cerrone, because that's typically the thing. Like, I was actually pretty surprised at how back and forth the Ferguson was, because he really did put in work against Ferguson.
He did.
That was a fight.
Yeah.
But then he broke.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he broke in the sense that he gave up. He got fucking battered when it came to it.
You just can't.
Like,
people can't deal with Ferguson's volume, dude. It's crazy.
He's a fucking
and
monster,
and
man.
and if so, this is crazy, right? I was looking at this the other day. Tony Ferguson, his fight record, the way he wins it's ridiculous. Like, I'm gonna pull this up right now so you guys could hear this, because it's very, very fascinating. I haven't really heard anybody talk about it, but you look at his last, I don't know, fucking 12 fights or whatever it is. Okay, Donald Cerrone, TKO, Dr. Stoppage. Anthony Pettis, TKO, Dr. Stoppage. Corner stoppage.
Yeah.
Kevin Lee, submission triangle choke. Decision over Rafael Dos Anjos, but he battered Dos Anjos.
Yeah.
But then before that, Lando Venata, submission, Darce choke.
Yeah.
Edson Barbosa, submission, Darce choke. Josh Thompson, decision. Gleason Tybau, submission, rear naked choke.
Josh
Abel Trujillo
Thompson is like one of the best fighters of all time that nobody fucking talks
Exactly.
about. That it just was in the wrong. He was in the just kind of the wrong era.
Right.
Like
he just it was like, he. So Abel Trujillo, submission, rear naked choke.
Abel Trujillo's that guy.
Super
who looks
yoked
like
guy.
He just eats pure steroids. Like,
Yes.
Right. Yeah. He's,
But what's fascinating about this record, what I'm getting at here, is there's like a pattern here where he'll have 2 wins in a row that are like the same style over and over again. And then on top of that, if you go even back further into his record, he has tons of stoppages. So Chris Kennedy, TKO, Dr. Stoppage. Aaron Riley, TKO, Dr. Stoppage. He's got a bunch of doctor stoppages. He has like 4 of them in here, which is crazy, because that just goes to show you Tony Ferguson does so much damage when he fights
people
dudes.
in the hospital.
Every guy that he fights.
Doctors recommend
even if
you do not fight Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through this list of this who's who fucking list of even like Josh Thompson, even his unanimous decisions, I remember that fight. He just destroyed. He looked like he beat him with a baseball bat after the fight. I mean, he's just so fucking violent, and he does so much damage to his opponent. I think at one point, and then even with Cerrone, you know, his face was so busted up. It's like they just get to a point where they're like, their body just shuts down.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't take this punishment anymore.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. He's like he has a similar psychological effect that I feel like Khabib has on people, except Khabib does it with physical pressure and wrestling, where people just get to this point where they're like, I can't fucking do this anymore.
Yeah.
They're being just crushed under the weight of their opponent.
Yeah. That's why
Ferguson does it with damage.
Yes.
Ferguson does it with a volume of damage that he's doing to you, where your face is peeling off the bone. And
Right.
you're just like, I am.
That's
I
why
can't
though.
keep going.
But that's why that's the fight to
Yeah.
make, because it's pressure versus damage.
Yeah.
That's such an
Yeah.
interesting matchup.
And neither one of them is going to relent to the other. It's an
No.
extremely interesting matchup. What did you think about Poirier versus Khabib? Did you think that he had him?
Poirier had him.
Yeah.
I think he probably hit him. But up until this point, Everybody had always said that the hardest Khabib had ever been hit was that Michael Johnson fight when he caught him. And then when Iaquinta fought him, he did start to, when Khabib started to fatigue in the later rounds, he had a little bit of success. I do think that was probably the cleanest punch that's been landed on him thus far. Not the cleanest punch that's been landed, but it had the most visible effect.
I have to rewatch it because I was watching the fights while I was at work. I was serving tables and everything, so I was kind of just trying to catch it as I was moving around. But I got a good look at that round when he landed on him and he had him backing up. And as I saw it, it was like, okay, so he landed shots. Mm-hmm. They were good shots, and he had him moving backwards. But the whole time that he was swinging on him, I was seeing Khabib roll with his punches. He was moving with the shots, which an uneducated fan will look at that and it looks like he's getting rocked because he's moving with the punch. But that's how you diffuse the damage from a punch, as you move with it. And as he's moving with it, and Poirier's moving in, Khabib is jabbing him out tight. Inside shots, boom, and you see him stopping him with them.
He's got better striking than people give him credit for.
It's not pretty and it's not exciting, but it's very effective. And so he was moving back and landing tight jabs, boom, tight straight shots as he's rolling through Poirier's punches, and then he took him down and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah. And it's the reason why Ferguson versus Khabib is such an interesting matchup is because if you look at both guys, you could really easily make the argument for either one. In Khabib's case, you can go back to like Ferguson versus Kevin Lee and say, you know, Kevin Lee's like obviously not as good of a wrestler as Khabib, and Ferguson had some trouble with him before Kevin Lee gassed, and he took him down pretty easily, repeatedly. But then on the flip side, people have cited Khabib's conditioning in the past, saying that he gasses in the last couple rounds, and Ferguson literally gets better with each round. He just turns up more and more. So you could go either way.
Also, Ferguson, his style in general is sort of that, has that like Diaz-esque approach where it's like he's not really trying to stop you from taking him down.
No.
The fact that you can take him down isn't really it's not really a cue as to whether or not he's beating you.
No.
He's gonna fight you from his back.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He's 100% cool with that.
Yeah, he does not care that he's getting taken down. He's like you said, he's totally cool with it, and he'll do damage from the bottom too.
Yeah, he'll be elbowing you from the bottom, and he'll be throwing submissions at you, and he may be losing on the scorecards because he's on his back, which is still something that needs to be, reviewed.
That's the fight to make. There's no other lightweight fight on the planet.
Dan Hardy made a really good point about that when I was listening to him talk, and he was saying like, and I agree with this, and I disagree to an extent, but I really agree with this statement. He was saying that to a wrestler or to somebody who's doing it, a takedown is sort of its own reward. Like you shouldn't just win a round because you took somebody down. You just changed the fight to where you want it to go. You hurt your opponent with a takedown. You should probably look at that as like, okay, that was what I wanted to do and I did it. Now I'm in a position that I get to fight from the way that I want to fight. As opposed to just being like, well, that takedown won him the round. So
there's not a fight on the planet Earth. I don't think there's a fight in lightweight history that I've ever wanted to see more than Khabib versus Ferguson. I think it's the perfect culmination. I don't think ever in lightweight history you've had two guys who are on more of a tear, who are both in their prime, clearly. Like that fight needs to happen like soon before they both retire.
It doesn't make any sense for that fight not to happen. The only thing that makes any sense about that is that they are that they're baiting it up. They're building the fight, and it's getting to a point where it's like we're at the pinnacle of this fight's potential. We need to just let it happen and enjoy it.
And you know what's weird? Khabib is like, I was never like a massive Khabib fan. I've always appreciated him from the very beginning. Like even back when he fought Dos Anjos, I was telling people this guy's gonna be the champion. Like he's fucking,
Yeah,
he's so
oh, yeah.
ridiculously dominant because people were paying
Dude,
attention.
I was saying that forever.
Right,
Like,
and people were paying attention to Dos Anjos when he was on his tear.
Yeah.
But then everybody forgot that right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of Dos
Khabib
Anjos'
beat the
tear,
fuck out of him.
Khabib absolutely manhandled him.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody forgets about that.
He was like fucking German suplexing.
Exactly. So I was telling everybody, dude, this guy's gonna be the fucking. You guys,
Yeah.
nobody could pronounce his fucking name, so nobody knew who he was. But
Nurmagomedov said it.
yeah,
First try.
but he's grown on me over time, even more so because of the fact that the guy is just so authentic. You know, he really does stick to what he thinks is right. Like when his dude jumped into the cage and punched Conor after the fight, I thought that was bullshit. Like I thought that dude should have been suspended or fired, but Khabib said, I don't give a fuck. I won't fight again unless that dude fights again.
Yeah.
And they had
That's
to
his
they
boy.
had to let him fight
Yeah.
again because he had his boys back, and you have to respect that.
Right.
I mean, that guy,
I also
he'll sacrifice his career
Mm-hmm.
just so his friend can have a piece of the pie. I
Yeah.
mean, there's something very admirable to that.
Also, I was just talking about this yesterday with my dad. Like Khabib is such a he didn't have an easy road to the top because he doesn't play the game. He does all of his promotion in the most authentic, real kind of way. All of his shit talking is in the fight.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Yep.
The shit he says to people while he's beating their ass. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And it has nothing to do with the promotion because you know he means it.
Well, and how about what he said about? They asked him recently about if he would fight, if he wants to fight Conor again. He said, "I won't fight him in the cage again. If I see him on the street, we'll fight every time, but I'm not fighting him in the cage."
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And
Yeah.
I think, and I believe him. I think he's dead fucking serious. I don't think it matters how much money they offer him.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't. I think Khabib views Conor as such a low life and such a scumbag that he doesn't even want to give him the opportunity to make that kind of money in the cage. It's not worth it to
I don't
him.
think it's about the money. He doesn't want to give him the opportunity to redeem himself. He's like, he doesn't feel like he deserves that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's not worthy on
Right.
all fronts.
Yeah, I don't think the money has anything to do with it. He's just like, fuck this little bitch. Like, why would I give him a shot to redeem himself? I took that from him. And,
Exactly.
And it's mine.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk about was God, there's so many fights to catch up on. Did you see Weili Zhang versus Jessica Andrade? 47-second KO.
No.
Weili Zhang is this little.
Oh, I think I did see that.
She's
That's
this little
pretty cool, yeah.
Chinese strawweight, but fuck, man, she's really good.
Yeah.
I saw her fight Tisha Torres in her last fight, and I guess they were having trouble getting her matchups, but super physical, super athletic, like just she's awesome. But that's a good one to see if you guys haven't seen it. The other one, Costa versus Romero.
What a
Jesus
fight, dude.
Christ!
First of all, the
Battle
the
of
bodies
the
on these
battle of the fucking
It looked
metahumans.
It looked like two Greek statues were fighting each other.
It was
just,
insanity.
like
Dude, the chins on those guys.
the chins.
Those
and the
those shots
fucking
that those
fit.
fucking dudes hit each other with
Hey.
would have knocked out not just
I'm-
middleweights, all the way up to heavyweight. That would have
Yeah.
knocked out any other fucking
I'm
fighters on the
telling you,
roster.
like those fucking guys. Like I 100% had faith in Costa, but for sure, you know he's the truth after that fight.
Yeah.
Like, that shit was a trial by fire, and
Yeah.
he came through, man.
And that
those
was
combos, those body shot that was such a rugged fight.
it was
a
rugged as fuck.
beautiful, rugged.
Each
tech-head,
punch
like,
just fucking
just
digging.
rrr,
Just
like,
digging in.
oh, man, what a
That was one of
beautiful
those
fight.
fights where it was a very rare fight where a lot of people thought that Romero had it, but it was very rare. I had it as a draw at the end of it. I
coulda-
legitimately had it as a draw.
100% that could have been a draw. I had it for Costa. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like Costa controlled a little bit more of the fight. Romero.
I agree. Yeah.
Romero waited too long.
Yeah,
to-
I
to
think
start being effective.
Costa
Yeah.
controlled a larger percentage of the fight. I do think that Romero probably did more damage,
in the end.
in the end.
In the end.
but it was too little, too late, in my opinion.
That's how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Fucking phenomenal fight. And
Yeah.
I think Costa did enough to get the win,
Yeah.
but I think it was really close, and I wouldn't have been upset with a draw.
No, I think if there's any fight that because that's the way I saw it is like okay,
But that's a fight I could watch over.
oh
and
yeah,
over again.
but it's a fight that is so fucking brutal and so visibly damaging that for both of their sakes,
takes an emotional toll.
yeah,
Just on
I
on
almost
the viewer alone.
exactly.
Like,
I almost don't even want them to book it
Yeah.
again because I'm like, fuck, these poor guys. Like that's gonna take some time off their career. Like that is a brutal fucking fight.
you don't want your fighters to go through that more than once. You
No.
get that, and that's a gift. That's
Yeah.
a gift from two people that they graced the world with. Like
Yeah.
that was a really special thing.
It was.
And if you didn't see it, you should honor them by watching it and really
Yeah.
appreciate the fact that they went through what they went through to make that possible.
Well, so-
because that was a real that was a moment in history. That
Yeah,
fight.
that's the type of thing that you just don't see. That's what makes the MMA and the UFC so special. That's the type of fight you just don't really see in like boxing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just when you have two guys who are just two fucking dominating
It was
physical specimens, they won't.
Yeah.
They just don't. They don't want to. They don't get matched
Yeah.
up. They don't want to fight each other.
And when they
And-
do, a lot of the time they fight very defensively,
Yeah.
and it ends up being a pretty boring fight because they're too dangerous,
Right.
and they don't really want to risk their careers on. But those guys put
This
it
was
all
opposite.
out there.
Total opposite.
They both put their dicks on the table,
Yeah.
and went all out. Fuck, man.
Yeah. That was a nerve wracking fight. That fight.
Oh, wait,
That
through.
fight was like two
Yeah.
guys put their, you said dicks, but let's say put their hands on a table and they're just watching the
Yeah.
knife go between
Yeah,
the fingers and you're like,
exactly. Yeah, you're just waiting for the blood to spray. Like it
Yeah.
was like dead serious. I can't stress this enough. Like if you are listening to this, if you have not seen that fight, go look it up because it's just it's a work of art. It's something
is.
that needs to be appreciated. Like
Yeah.
those guys need to be honored for the sacrifice they put.
you know what's
in,
so
like-
fascinating about that fight too? It is the polar opposite of Adesanya versus Anderson of last year.
Right.
It's perfect
Not
contrast.
to say that wasn't a great fight either.
Yeah.
But
But just
Adesanya-
perfect
yeah.
contrast, right?
Yeah,
Total
Adesanya-
opposite
yeah.
ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, Adesanya and Anderson Silva was a very respectful, distanced, slow-paced, like a sparring match almost, but it was like a masterful sparring match.
Yeah.
It was two genuine experts
Mm-hmm.
that were fighting almost at a pace where it was like there's no way they're going to hurt each other.
Right.
Like-
Well, right now the middleweight
Yeah.
division might be the most interesting division because you have Adesanya coming off that fucking batshit crazy fight with
Yeah,
Gastelum,
with Gastelum.
and then people just keep forgetting that Whitaker is the champion, and
Yeah.
Whitaker is a fucking just savage.
Yeah.
Like what's crazy about Whitaker is he fought Romero twice, beat him fairly cleanly the first time.
Yeah.
That was
The
pretty.
second time was
Second time was
questionable,
questionable, but
I don't disagree with it.
Yeah, I don't.
would have to watch that fight again,
I don't.
but I don't
and
disagree with
and
the
I've heard
decision.
people like Joe Rogan has said he thought that Romero edged the 2nd
Mm-hmm.
one, but I'm totally cool with this. A lot of people might disagree with this. If a guy decisively wins the first fight and then the second fight is that close, in my eyes, that guy is still kind of the winner.
As it's
you know?
sort of in a sense, it's like a carryover. Like the loser still has to climb the mountain.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
still another hill to.
I think too, it's partially just because of the fact that the obvious fucking physical advantages Romero has over everybody he fights. I mean,
except for Costa.
except for Costa, but you know what I mean? Like, and then
Yeah.
you look at somebody like Whitaker, who, if you saw those two guys out and about, or you just saw them at the beach with their shirts off, you'd be like, this fucking dude is gonna
Yeah.
kill this guy. Like,
Right.
he doesn't even stand a chance. But then Whitaker comes out and he's so fucking athletic and explosive. It's
Right.
it's incredible. Whitaker he's had some unfortunate like setbacks, so we haven't got to see him fight in a
Right.
while. But
Was it
people
his-
forget
is it
about
his
how
shoulder?
fucking.
Is that what it is, or is it knee? Like,
I don't even remember. It was his knee before.
One of
I don't know
those
what it was
generic
recently.
injuries that everybody's
But
got.
him versus
Boring.
Adesanya, that's an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
Normally, I would say that Whitaker is just going to go in there and starch him. But if you look at Whitaker's record, he has one standout loss, and that was the one to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. and talk about some similarities, right? I mean, not to say
Sure,
it's
yeah.
similar range type fighter, you know.
Yeah, similar characteristics.
So if he
very
had
different
trouble,
styles.
yeah, but if he had trouble with that rangy type of specialist striker, could very easily happen with somebody like a Adesanya. But I am picking Whitaker for that fight pretty definitively.
I would take Whitaker for that fight. Obviously, Adesanya has the potential to beat anybody. There's no safe place against a guy like that, you know. But I just think Whitaker is a fucking force to be reckoned with. I don't know.
Yeah.
I see him winning that fight.
Yeah.
In pretty simple terms, I just see him being too physical, too powerful, and overwhelming. Adesanya.
He's just I mean, Adesanya had trouble with Gastelum, and Whitaker to me is just like a much better version of Gastelum.
Oh yeah. Much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, as far as everything else goes, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Did you hear about Sony with Marvel? Marvel lost the rights to a Spider-Man.
Really?
Yeah. So Sony, the whole deal that they had worked out was that Sony was basically like loaning Spider-Man to Marvel for like 6 movies.
Right.
And the way that the deal was worked out is that Sony would get all of the profits for the Spider-Man films. Marvel would make the films. So they produced them, they put them together, they hired directors, actors, everything. They were in charge of the creative process, but Sony received all of the profits. But Marvel, in return, got all of the merchandise rights to Spider-Man, which apparently far exceed the movie rights.
That's
It's a lot of money.
Movies make any money nowadays.
Yeah.
Nobody pays for that shit.
So they went to the negotiating table, and Marvel basically said, we want 50% of the movie revenue as well. And Sony was like, no, that's apparently Sony is like a dying company right now, and their movie section of their company is not profitable. And they basically.
I don't really think Sony's doing that good in general, are they? Aside from PlayStation, I don't like.
Yeah, no, that's
they have a couple cameras that are pretty high end, but I don't think that they're as good as like. They're not even like as good or as popular as like Canons.
From what I've read more specifically, just purely the movie department is just not doing well. They're not.
Yeah. Their movies.
So
nobody likes Sony movies.
The rumor is that, except fucking Venom, which we already talked about.
Yeah.
But the rumor is that Marvel came in and purposefully gave them, or Disney rather, came in and purposefully gave them a highball offer, anticipating them to say no. Because of the fact they aren't doing so well, there's been a rumor that Amazon has been thinking about purchasing Sony. And one of the clauses in the contract that Sony has is that they have to continually pump out Spider-Man movies. They have to make a Spider-Man movie every 2 years, otherwise the rights revert back to Marvel.
That's
which
hilarious.
Isn't that weird?
So
which
funny.
is why you've had a Spider-Man movie he's been rebooted so many times. So the word on the street is Marvel came in with a highball and wanting them to say no. So that way, when Amazon purchases Sony in a few years, which they're hoping they do, and so supposedly what it says in the contract is that if Sony is bought out by another company, the rights instantly revert back to Marvel.
Okay.
So Marvel's thinking, hey, we could get Spider-Man for free down the line if Amazon purchases Sony.
Okay.
Which is a pretty ballsy move, and it's a pretty... I don't know. It's a pretty ballsy move on their part, because I'm assuming what Sony's going to do now is they're just going to throw Spider-Man into the Venom universe, which is going to be a fucking disaster.
Sure.
And we'll see what happens.
If we could have had Venom produced by Marvel,
so much better. Would have been
good.
So much better.
With the all-star, just same cast that we had there. If we just had Marvel creating that instead of Sony, that could have been... Like, did you ever see that Deadpool movie that they did?
Yeah, Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time, where he has Fred Savage and they do.
Yeah.
I loved what he said. It was so funny. He's like, he's like, I like Marvel movies. Like, we are Marvel. So, well,
Yeah.
you're Marvel distributed by Sony. That's like the Beatles distributed by the Backstreet Boys.
Right. Yeah. And now Deadpool. So Deadpool, since Deadpool's Fox. So since Deadpool's a Fox, or X-Men are all Fox, now Disney purchased Fox.
Yeah.
So now they're all. So who knows what they're gonna do with Deadpool? If they're gonna keep him his own separate entity, or kind of try to do their own. But you can't do Deadpool.
I have pretty strong feelings about Deadpool and the way things have gone with the more the last movie, but a little bit with the first one. The whole deal about how they are so out there that it's like with the comedy level of it, where it's like lost. I lose interest in it.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
like
it's goofy enough. It's so goofy to the point where you don't really have any like emotional attachment to it. Yeah, I can see that.
It distracts me from being interested in the movie. I see it one time and I'm like, I got some laughs out of it. I enjoyed it, but I can't like rewatch. It has like no rewatch quality to me because it's just like, okay, there was nothing. There was no substance.
I can see that, but there's also two ways you can go with that. One being that there's your point, which is it lacks a certain
I'm aware
level
that that's the nature of Deadpool as well. Like that, I'm not dismissing that fact either.
Right.
But it's also like you have to take into account the watchability of it.
Yeah, it lacks a certain level of like emotional content. But on the flip side, because the character is so meta and so self-aware, you can easily take that character and insert him into the Marvel universe without even having to explain anything.
Right. Exactly.
Like you could have him just make jokes about it, and people would just think it's funny.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with any of the other X-Men characters.
He could easily be just inserted into the Marvel universe and everything, no problem. But that was my only like issue with the Deadpool movies, and the cringy like reusage of jokes in the second one. That was just really like uncomfortable.
It's funny because I referenced when I was doing my review for it, volume chapter 2, I referenced Deadpool 1 and 2, and I said that it's a classic example of when a studio, kind of what I alluded to earlier, when a studio gets way more money for the sequel, and then it's inflated and it's overblown. And that's kind of how it felt with Deadpool 2. It's like they had all this extra money, and then you kind of lost some of the creativity of the first one, and it was just a lot of recycled shit, which is kind of how chapter 2 felt like. I mean, Deadpool 2 was... there was some moments in it that legitimately had me in stitches laughing. Yeah. Like the scene where he has the baby legs. Yeah. It was some of the hardest I've ever laughed in a theater in my life.
He's doing it.
Yeah, like you look at the little guy. He's walking. It was one of the funniest like it was honestly one of the hardest I've ever laughed in theaters. Like when it was just the visual of it was just so it did have its moments, but as a whole, it could have been a lot better. And I would be much more curious to see how Marvel, like specifically the Cable character. I think the casting was spot on. I liked Josh Brolin as Cable. Everything visually wasn't bad. I didn't mind the look and all that, but I think Marvel could have done a much better job of actually, giving you that epic backstory of Cable and weaving it in with Cyclops and Jean Grey. And
it just seemed kind of like thrown in. It seemed like it was just kind of like touched on.
Yeah.
Just shows him with his burnt family. He's like, and then it moves on. It's
yeah.
Kind of like, okay, well.
Yeah,
it just interesting, but
yeah, they just it just wasn't like standout. The first one was really like a pleasant surprise, and you didn't get that so much with the second one.
The second one just kind of seemed like we were reaching to have some more of it, and wasn't really too happy with it. I also feel like on top of the emotional connection and everything, as we mentioned, that invests you in the movie and makes it interesting, I felt like it was very low action because of that. Like the action seemed very superficial and just like something. It was like a layer on top of like the silliness and
the action was like a reason to get to the next joke. Or
exactly. That's what that felt like. It felt like the action had no consequence in it.
Right.
And that's one of the things I really like about Deadpool is the fact that he's this weird, meta, silly, like out there character who also is like a super badass.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy that other element to him.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas in the movie they just make it pure comedy. Like you got none of the badassness of Deadpool in the movie. And you need a little bit of that. I mean, for any action comedy to be successful, like you have to have, especially if it's a superhero.
Yeah, it has to have a strong element of the action.
Yeah. And that's what Marvel gets right so perfectly, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Thor movies, or anything with Thor in it.
Yeah,
he's great, but he's fucking hilarious too.
Yeah,
like,
yep. And that was like actually the last Thor movie, Ragnarok. That was probably my favorite Marvel movie.
Me too.
I loved that movie.
I think I've watched that one more times than any of the other Marvel movies.
By far the most rewatchable on its own.
Oh yeah, definitely. So many good things, and the humor of it doesn't in any way take away from the foundation of it being an exciting action movie. But the humor, it's full blown a comedy.
Yeah,
it's so funny. It's legitimate as a comedy.
Yes, and you can still, and that's a perfect example, because like at the end, right, when Thor gets his powers restored or whatever, and he comes in with the lightning, and you still can get like pumped up for that while it being funny. Whereas Deadpool, not so much. Like you'll think you're gonna get a cool moment like that, and then it just kind of fizzles out, and I don't know. Did you see the trailer for Joker?
I saw the one, like the original teaser, like the one that you and I talked about, and we're just kind of like.
Well, so now there is heavy duty buzz on the streets about Joker. Have you heard about this? They're saying like Oscar really contender level.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
And it just won, actually. I'll have to fact check this real quick, but it actually just won at one of the film festivals. It won Best Picture, which is like unheard of for a comic book movie.
Yeah.
But it actually, I think Joker right now has almost like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah, so.
It looked kind of like it made me nervous looking at the original teaser. Like it looked like it had potential to be good, but it also looked like it had potential to be fucking super shitty.
Trying to find it right now. I'm trying to find the Rotten Tomatoes for Joker right now, but I'm having trouble. Yeah. But anyways, it's high up there. It's supposed to be really good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
No, I need to watch the latest trailer and see what's going on. When is that released?
I think in November. It comes out soon.
Jesus Christ, man.
Either November or like next month, but in any case, they're saying it's good.
Yeah, what's his name? Joaquin Phoenix.
He's
kind of turning back into a human being, like, you know.
Well,
we're seeing him do stuff, and it looks like what he's doing is intentional again.
Oh, no, sooner than I thought. Sorry, Joker comes out on October 4th.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh. And it's supposed to be great. Todd Phillips directed it.
I remember we discussed this. We discussed this on one of the podcasts a while ago. Todd Phillips.
Good old Todd Phillips.
He had like he directed like some weird.
He's mostly a comedy director.
Yeah. He did like Old School and stuff, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he did Due Date.
Yeah. He also did Road Trip.
Road Trip, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, then Old School, Starsky and Hutch, School for Scoundrels,
that's right.
The Hangover.
He does a cameo appearance in The Hangover. He's the guy getting blown in the elevator.
Yeah. Most people will remember him as the gangbang guy from Old School.
It's I'm here for the gangbang.
Yeah. Probably the best line of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for that with all the buzz surrounding that. It actually when you go and you watch the extended trailers now, you can actually see that it's probably is going to be a pretty good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll need to see the newest trailer before I can comment. Yeah. But yeah, did we have anything else that we wanted to discuss today? Anything on the agenda?
That was all the major stuff. You know.
Yeah.
I got to go back to work soon, so.
Yeah.
But I think that's a pretty nice little catch up on all things MMA and movies and entertainment.
It's just nice to be doing this again. I mean, I literally just Matt pulled me out of a coma to do this right now, so not at my sharpest, but we're gonna be getting more of these in. I know I say that every time we come back from a hiatus.
We're serious this time.
I'm back in Santa Maria.
Because we live in the same town now, so it's gonna be a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. We are gonna be training at Matt's gym. I'm gonna be doing private sessions, teaching some Muay Thai, teaching some grappling. Anybody who wants to get some work in, I'm here. I'm in Santa Maria, Central Coast, motherfuckers. Let's make it worth something.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Get me on Bone Catrone on Instagram. Follow the Back and Bone Show.
Yes.
Follow Matt, whatever he does. I don't give a shit.
I just posted a movie review on my Matt Reviews Media for the first time in like 9 months because I stopped being lazy. But I'm going to start doing that again. Yeah. So check out Matt Reviews Media if you want to see my movie reviews. If you want to see my new studio, go to Core 4 on Instagram. And I have a spin hybrid training class that I've started. And if you want to check that out and huff and puff and get real sweaty, come see me.
Yeah. And if you want to learn how to kick faces and, elbow people and break bones, yours and theirs, come see me. And if you take anything from today's podcast, it is that you should probably watch Wolf Cop.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Wolf Cop.
We didn't talk about
I still need to watch. We'll save that for next time because I still need to watch Wolf Cop.
Wolf Cop and Turbo Kid. Look forward to some retro reviews. Movies came out a few years ago. Turbo Kid, I think, was 2016, 15.
Probably 15, because that was a while back when I watched
Cop
it.
Was, 2014.
If you enjoyed, God, why am I forgetting the name of it? That short 30-minute one that was on Netflix. Remember Kung Fury? If you enjoyed Kung Fury, you will like Turbo Kid and Wolf Cop.
Yeah, they're very, very campy. Like no famous people in it campy, except Michael Ironside is he's on Turbo Kid, but. We're going to rewatch. I'm going to rewatch those movies because I was drunk off my ass when I was watching Wolf Cop last night. Matt's going to watch it, and we'll be back. And you should watch it too.